28th.
You're good to go.
Sorry, I'm going to call the March 28th, 2022 Katuitt Fire District Prudential Committee meeting to order. Going to do a roll call. Seth Burdick,
Seth Burdick, present.
Mark Lynch,
Here.
Charlie Eager,
Present.
Ray Perone,
Present.
Fran Parks present. Also present is Chris Wiseman from Water, Tom Hoppenstadt from Water, and Rick Pisano from Fire. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Do we have our picture? Lisa? There it is.
There we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all. Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Just a minute.
Okay,
I'm having problems here with my screen. There is no public comment.
thank you. So, shall we do the 23 budget, FY23 budgets, Ray?
Do we want to start off with fire and water, and then I'll do finance through the summary.
Okay. Tom, do you want to start, or Chris?
Sure, I can start. You guys all have a copy of the budget?
Yes.
You do? Lisa, you're muted.
Yes,
Um,
Tom, they'll have a copy in my format. I don't know if they have your exact format.
Right, so I only have Ray's format, so I'm going to bring that up now.
Okay, that'd be great. I think that's fine. I'm actually not sure if I'm looking at Ray's format or our format. But
No, sorry, that's not it.
yeah,
Hold
I
on.
looked at both of them and they look the same to me.
Here we go. You want water?
Right?
There you go.
There we are. Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so as I don't know how you guys want to go through this, but we've put together a pretty comprehensive budget, we feel. As you can see by what's displayed on the screen, we're looking at about a 9.5% increase for wages. And that involves raises for cost of living increases, which were really high. The COLA set by the Social Security Administration at the beginning of the year was 5.9%. And that's pretty much what we went with across the board. And then we had some additional increases associated with merit, with excellent work, and with Chris also some longevity increase, because correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is it 30 or 25? 30.
35.
35, like I'm way off, right?
Mm.
He's been there a long time. We would like to keep him. So we're bringing that up as well. And we also increased our overtime and our on-call wages slightly, just to kind of keep pace with what's going on with other districts and how we feel our staff is progressing. If you look at the senior operators and operator, that didn't go down or didn't go up as much as the others, and that's because we We feel we have a good succession plan in place with our two senior operators. We think that either of those guys, with the amount of training they've been doing and the work and experience that they've gained over the years from Chris, that they could step into that role if and when Chris hits the lottery and decides to take a few months off or whatever. So that includes no assistant superintendent, and that's why that's down considerably from the others. Any questions on salaries? Article 9.
Do you expect that there will be merit and cost of living adjustment increases in upcoming years?
Yes,
Okay.
we try to keep the cost of living kind of consistent with what the government agencies establish as their COLAs, and then the merits depend on how much work the guys have done, their training, whether or not they've had any problems with any of our customers or with any problem that might arise at one of the pump houses or part of the delivery system. And these guys are really doing good work for us.
Okay.
So that goes into that consideration. But I fully expect that.
You expect both categories to continue?
Yes. Now the longevity increase, that was a big one this year because we've never given him one of those. And so that's why that's higher than the others, considerably higher.
I have a question. Are they now on a par with the other water departments for salaries?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. I looked at Mashpee when I was thinking about this, and Mashpee's a little different because they're DPW workers, but they were all a little higher than this. But they also seem to have more longevity, like the operators have been there longer.
They part of a union?
I think Mashpee is, yeah, because they're DPW. Yes.
Tom, do we have a schedule set up for longevity in the water department?
We do
After
not.
so many years, et cetera?
Yeah, we don't. We had step increases, Ray, and now they've all exceeded their stay with us from what we had originally set up, and that was Dawn and I, and who was Vic.
Vic
Oh.
also.
Yeah, but they've all exceeded that, and the reason we have put those steps into play was just to do this, to make sure that we didn't lose staff to other districts.
Okay.
And so that's something that maybe we should work on this coming years. That's a good question, is some long-term longevity steps or longevity increases. I'll just write a note here on that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Tom.
Okay. Any other questions on that? I know the COLA was high this year because of the cost of everything increasing, but I'm sure I don't need to talk about that with you guys. You've seen it, lived it. So that's the personnel for Article 9, and then the other operating budget there in Article 9 is shown there, and there's ups and downs, and we tried to go through that with a fine-tooth comb, and particularly Chris and Jen spent hours on this in the office going through and trying to figure out just what's going to be enough and where we could level fund and or go down. And so we played that horse trading game and came up with that budget for, I think, if you could just scroll down a little bit, Lisa, we could see it's an overall increase of almost 6%. No new lines in there. We were gonna put some of the computer upgrades, I guess, into Article 9, but on Ray's recommendation. We moved that into a separate article. Any questions there?
I have one question.
Yes.
The pumping stations all have heat, correct?
They do.
They do. And is that gas?
Chris?
Only one station has gas, the natural gas. The rest of them are electrical units.
Oh, okay. So, do you think that it's a $8,000? No, yeah, the electricity is the same as last year? Do you think?
Yeah, because we're still under the locked-in rate with
Oh, okay.
yeah. We still through Cape Lake Compact there. We all the district's locked into what I think it's like 8 point something per mil something. I can't remember. We looked that up though, and we're locked in for another 2 years on that, or another year.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Didn't want you to run out of money there.
Yeah, it's a wild card. Thanks, Frank.
It's going to be tough this year.
Okay, and then we're looking at capital articles. Any other questions on the operating budget?
Just one,
Yeah.
I was looking at something, I may have missed this. Have we decided to pull the trigger on the MuniLink system?
Yeah, so that's down in as a separate article now, Mark.
Okay,
That was Ray's recommendation because it's a big ticket. But we're hoping and we feel strongly that it's gonna maintain our transparency. It's gonna meet the needs of the auditors. And it's going to be easier for the finance folks to as they work with our office to keep track of things.
I
So
know
that's-
Jim was an enthusiastic supporter of that. Ray, I assume that fixes the problem, that plus the lockbox fixes the issues that you've had?
That's correct. Correct,
Okay.
and multi-link will link, if you will, with Vadar.
Terrific, good result.
And that's Article 10. And I know Ray and Jen and others have done a lot of work on that. So they looked at 3 different billing systems for that, and they came up with this MuniLink, which seems to hit all the bells and whistles that we need it to hit, and it's consistently priced with the Vadar system that the treasurer currently uses. Only it has more features which allow us to maintain the transparency for our customers, which we thought was pretty important.
Okay, good.
And that's Article 10 there. And then we need to do some work on, if we look at that, just up a little bit, there we go. We've got test wells that we'd like to do, and that's part of our capital improvement budget, and that's to kind of get a feel and get a handle on source water protection. And that's going to be consultation and some additional well sampling to make sure that we catch anything that might be coming from potential sources, whether they be landscape operations or the old fuel station or some of the neighborhoods that have older septic systems. And then we've got a replacement service truck, 75K. We've got pumps and electricity and primarily electric panels that need to be replaced at, we're going for 3? Was it 3, Chris?
2.
Two of the,
yeah,
two
the
of
2
the
oldest.
pump stations. Yeah, the 2 oldest ones. So those are the other 4 articles that we have.
Ray, can you explain for me, perhaps for others, what we mean when we say free cash? I note that the fire department's proposed ambulance is the same funding source. What does that mean?
Actually, why don't we wait until the end to talk about free cash? I've made some assumptions when I put together this draft of the budget, and I'd like to talk about that when we come up to the end and talk about the summary. And we can talk about it in full then. Is that all right?
Yeah,
I mean, I can give you a quick definition of free cash.
yeah, why don't you do that, just for starters?
It is, if you could relate it to the commercial world, it is the net addition to retained earnings each year. It is made up of what we collect over and above our budget, what we spend less than our budget, any carryover from prior years' free cash, less what is outstanding in tax receivables. That's a very broad brush definition of the sources of free cash.
And we hope that, or expect that amount, therefore, subject to the caveats you just made, will be generated in this coming fiscal year.
No, it was generated as of the end of 2021. It was based on the results of our fiscal 21 results and the balance sheet as of 6/30/21. It was certified in the fall by the state and is available to the district to spend based on district vote through June 30th of 2022, when
Okay.
it, in essence, disappears and becomes part of the next year's calculation.
Got it. And what is the total amount of that free cash?
1,253,000 or 54, I believe.
Okay, thanks. That's what I needed. That's very helpful. Can you guys give me 30 seconds on the new truck? And the electrical upgrades obviously need to be done. What's the situation with the truck?
Chris, you want to jump
Yeah.
in on that? Thank you.
Sure. The truck is going to be replacing a truck that's 9 years old right now. It's our plow truck and a service truck at the same time. So it gets a lot of use and gets beaten up quite a bit. And we had to raise the price there because the price of pickup trucks is going, they're skyrocketing right now. To tell you the truth, I don't even know if we'll be able to get a truck this year. We'll be ordering as soon as the meeting's over and hoping that we can get something here because they're just tough to get right now.
Yeah.
It'll be a 1-ton with a service body on the back and a plow on the front. And we'll get all new on everything. So we're hoping that right now, when I talked to the guy, he said, when I talked to him 3 months ago, he told me to go in, I think it's 60,000 to be safe. And I actually raised that because of the prices that have been going up since then.
Okay.
So it'll be for the service truck and accessories to it. So it'll have the lights and the emergency lights and everything else on there also. And if there's anything left over, it will be turned right back in.
And what's the resale value, if any, of the 9-year-old truck?
Usually it's a lot better for us to sell them outright because when we buy direct from some of these places, they give it to us at a discounted rate. They don't give us a large amount of money when we trade them in. They're usually $1,000 to $1,500 to $2,000. This truck doesn't have any real bad problems right now. It's just taking a lot on repairs. We're starting to lose some rust here and there and everything. So it would be better to sell it outright. I think it would be better for the district if we sell it outright through a bidding process, basically.
Okay, but a relatively small amount.
Correct.
All right.
Do we have to go through like a surplus equipment process for that, Chris?
Yeah, we have to basically
Mm.
put out that we're accepting sealed bids on it, you know, and
Okay.
people can come down and look. We've done it a couple times. So we'll just put it out and people will come and look at it and they'll view it there. Every once in a while, you'll see one of the water department's old trucks driving around.
Do we sell it as is?
Correct. Yes,
Thanks, Chris.
no problem.
Any other questions on that, any of the articles?
No, I think, Seth, do you have any questions?
Nope.
No.
And of course, you know, we're getting into the process early, so if anything comes up or something pops into your minds that could save us some money, certainly chime in, let us know anytime. We appreciate your help.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Rick?
Okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, say again?
I'm just asking if you can hear me all right.
Yes.
I was having a little trouble with my mute earlier.
Yep, we're all set.
I see the budget has been brought up on the shared screen, so our budget typically is divided at annual meeting in the request into 4 areas. The way we prepped it this year, it really shows as 2. Let's start with labor and salaries. Most of the increase that you see there represents the previously negotiated increases in the union contract. We have a negotiated salary with the new chief, who starts a week from today. That reflects an attempt to keep the chief's salary at something close to the average for a district our size on the Cape, and a modest increase in the salary for the deputy chief line. All the rest of the increases represent, as I said, pre-negotiated increases as a function of the contract. The total increase in wages and salaries, we were pleased to see, came in at 3.62 is what Ray has it. In our version, it somehow came up at 4%, but the rounding errors probably account for that difference. I'm happy to go with Ray's number. It's a lower percent. Are there any questions about this section?
Rick, is the dollar amount the same in your version?
Yep.
Okay,
1899283. I think mine shows 0.05. I'll give you the nickel.
yeah, I usually eliminate pennies because they bother my eyes.
I got you. No questions about wages and salaries?
No, none for me. Mark?
Nope, none for me.
Seth?
Or me, nope.
Good. We'll go on to the second large grouping, which if you break out, the last item is miscellaneous at $1,000, no change. So we can just assume that. The 2 major categories in the next section are maintenance and operating expenses. If you break them out, the maintenance is $67,207.98, and the operating expenses at $292,238, for a total in this section of $359,446. And that includes $1,000 unchanged in miscellaneous. We worked really hard to try to figure out how to anticipate cost of living increases in this area with inflation, and particularly areas like utilities and fuel costs, which represent big categories for us, and where we could cut and some of which represents calculated gambles. But based on last year, for example, in legal expenses and professional services, we were able to take some money out, figuring what we spent last year and what we anticipate coming up. Since we will be starting union contract negotiations next fall, legal remains kind of a question mark area, but we hope to not have to exceed that budgeted amount. Anyhow, with all the juggling, that total category we managed to bring in at approximately a 1% increase on my numbers and a 0.5% on Ray's. So once again, I'll happily defer to Ray's for an overall increase in our budget of 3.11%. Any questions about anything in that area?
I just, I'm wondering if the increases that you put in for, the utilities, are gonna be enough. Do you think,
Yeah,
Ray?
we wondered about that too, Fran. It's kind of a question mark. Hopefully, because we buy most of the gas and diesel through our agreement with Tom, through their pumps and storage, we hope to not be at the mercy of the most volatile fluctuations in the fuel market. But electric and heating, yeah, we're looking at desired targets.
I think
We
both,
did a lot of research about projections, and of course, we asked 100 economists and got 200 different answers. So we ended up doing the best we could at trying to review past years and weather conditions and such.
I think
But
that-
admittedly, there's some, guesswork going on into anything like that.
I think we ought to realize that we'll be taking a look at this through the next iteration. The electricity, particularly. I mean, you look at the running rate and try to bump it up just to the current, it gets frightening. About 21% is about what I see.
Okay.
But I think it bears looking at again.
Wow.
Okay,
Well, we did this year. Budget construction was a little bit different process because of Chief Rude's retirement. Normally, he and I would work closely together to develop a first draft, which we would put in front of the other commissioners, and then the 3 commissioners would work to go through and try to come up with a product. Because Chief Small does not have a lot of experience with our department, I put together with him a preliminary framework that we got out to the commissioners earlier than usual and worked really hard to go through this, kind of subdividing areas and then pooling information. So that was the process. But with the new chief coming in a week from today, I would certainly think that one of our first priorities will be to try to get him up to speed and go back through the budget again with him for any additional input and adjustment.
Rick, I wonder if it would be useful to contact COM and see what their fuel cost projections are. I was going to say I could contact the treasurer over there and see what they're anticipating. We ought to probably follow their lead.
That's a great idea. I did not know who I would contact over there to ask that, but if you know their treasurer, he or she would have that data based on their budget work. If you could do that and get back to me, I'd greatly appreciate that.
I will do that.
If there are no other questions about this, we can move into our capital plan. The only item that shows for fiscal 23 in our capital plan is ambulance replacement. The cost of which was first calculated back a few years ago and then added annual estimated increases of about 3%. I don't have current estimates of vehicle prices in this category because much as you heard from the water department earlier about trucks, electronic supplies are creating such bottlenecks that A, I don't know if we could actually get an order in, and B, what in the world the cost might have gone up to. Our hope, as you might recall, is that we had two potential plans in place when we expended last year and the year before some significant funds on repair of the existing ambulance to try to extend its lifespan beyond this projected replacement timeline and supplement it with a shared ambulance. We had that article that passed last year that would help us look at a shared ambulance with Sandwich, and the two options that are still on the table and being explored is the retiring ambulance in Chatham, which would suit both departments' needs. And were it to become available, we have kind of first dibs on it, and then would have to work out a more detailed sharing arrangement with Sandwich. But with it as an available backup, we would try to string the life of the current ambulance, given that we put substantial monies in the last 2 years to overhauling the entire complicated exhaust system of it. The second option is that Sandwich itself is online to have a new ambulance come available within the next, I think it's 6 or 8 months, and retiring an ambulance of theirs into a shared status arrangement with us. Either way, if we can get a backup ambulance available on an arrangement with them and work out a memorandum of understanding about its availability, it might be well worth trying to string this article out 1 or 2 years. We were cautiously hoping that maybe we get 2 more years out of it and push this cost out. But we felt we had to show this for fiscal 23 because that when we got this ambulance, that was about the typical replacement period interval. Oh, went away. So that's the only item that we have showing in fiscal 23. We added this year a projection. Well, we have always maintained a capital plan that goes out well beyond the next 1 or 2 fiscal years. This year we show a projection in fiscal year 26 that we are finally going to be really up against it for station replacement. And based on the costs of recent new stations built in areas on the Cape that would be of a size that would meet our needs, new station replacement in today's dollars would be between $11 and $12 million. We have a second item in that projection under station replacement, which would be contingent on A, getting the school property, B, using the already allocated monies for a comprehensive study to add on to the original study that was done a couple of years ago about remodeling the existing building and having that looked at again with the option of a remodel on the, I think that is the western 2/3 of the existing school building. That very rough estimates from contractors that we were able to get opinions from on walkthroughs might represent something more in the order of a $7 to $8 million investment. So that shows up in our projections for FY26. Between now and then, there are also in our projections some other replacement vehicles. All of these are on the table for discussion with the new chief as he gets on board to look at utilization patterns and needs and status. But that'll play out over the next probably 2 months. Any questions about that?
I do have one question. Did you look at all at the possibility of leasing a new ambulance?
We started to examine availability and didn't before Paul left, and didn't really come up with much solid data. And then when he left, we didn't really have the opportunity to follow up on that. That's obviously also going to be on the agenda, but a shared replacement would represent our least expensive potential option. So if we could do something like that, if either of the pathways lead to that, so that we can pick the replacement of our main ambulance out a couple of years, that I think would be the most economical way to go forward and make sure that we have adequate coverage.
In terms of what you need on the ambulance and the the chips and all the electronics, it'd probably be better to wait a couple of years till hopefully the world gets back in shape.
As I said, because of that, I don't even know, as I think Tom mentioned about, Tom or Chris mentioned about replacing their truck. It's hard to even tell whether we jumped in the market tomorrow morning, whether they'd even be anything to place an order on.
Yeah.
And Rick, this new ambulance, well, we're still going to pursue the sharing possibilities with Sandwich, and this new contemplated ambulance would be to replace our existing one, but we would still be investigating the sharing. Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, if we can get a sharing arrangement in place so that we have an available backup, it, I think, would be worth trying to extend the life of the current ambulance, call it 2 years. Given the amount of money that we put in overhauling the most vulnerable components in the very complicated exhaust system, plus some of the tankage and the mechanics of it. You know, it's one of those diesel engines that I never want to see again. So we put a lot of money into putting it back together and keeping it running. And if we could get 2 years out of it, having a backup available so that we're not left blowing in the wind if it should fail, then I really think would be worth trying to run the current ambulance out a couple of years. It shows up, as I said earlier, it shows up here for fiscal 23, because when we bought this ambulance, the standard projection for lifespan signaled it as to be replaced by I think it was FY 22, and then it got moved out to 23.
Great. Does anybody have any other concerns or questions?
No.
No.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, why don't we go back to finance now and we'll start there.
Hey, Ray,
Yes,
it's
sir.
Chris. Could you include me in, when you talk to, the treasurer over in COM on the gas anticipation? Yeah,
Sure.
just include me if you can in that email. Thank you.
I was saying, well, never mind. The finance department overall salaries show a decline of 1.6% due to the elimination of the administrative assistant, and those duties were allocated to other individuals. The Treasury Department shows an increase of 7.8%. That's 10% cost of living and merit for the assistant treasurer and 5% cost of living for the treasurer. The rest of the areas in the expenditure are level funded with the following exceptions. Accounting services remains level funded. I point out that we get an actuarial bill every other year, and that bill will be coming next year. We may overspend the article this year because it hit this year and it'll hit then again in 24. Everything else is level funded and based on the running rate looks reasonable until you get down to computer expense. And I've added $1,000, which is basically an inflationary protection in that area going forward. I'll have we need to replace computers, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. The insurance, I don't have an estimate yet from the agents, but based on what I see in the media, the losses that insurance companies have incurred and reinsurers, a 15% increase in property and liability insurance would not be out of the unexpected. Workers' comp, I've basically just annualized the current running rate, and basically we spend the workers' comp and are reimbursed for it. So you end up with an expense in one place and proceeds in another. And my accounting union doesn't let me put the two together, so we keep them apart. Unemployment insurance.
Let me interrupt you there. You lost me. To explain that again.
Our workers' comp policy provides reimbursement up to a certain level.
Meaning we're self-insured?
Beyond the level.
Beyond the level. Got it. And what's the level?
10,000,
Okay.
I think. I'll have to check. Let me check that and get back with you.
Ray, we received $27,900 since the beginning of fiscal year 22 in a workers' comp claim.
Yep.
Disability. I don't know if that's what you're speaking to.
Yes, it is. That's why I want to check that. For some reason, 10 sticks in my mind, but I know that Lisa's right. We've got 27 already that we've received in compensation for what we've expended. So Mark, I'll have to get the details and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
In the unemployment insurance, we got surprised by bills this year. Shouldn't have been really, but it wasn't in the budget. So we're putting in the budget next year. the state has a bit of distance to make up after COVID, and they make up that distance by billing the participant companies in the unemployment insurance plan. And so we are anticipating about a $5,000 bill this year and next for that. The only other change is I've just consolidated some of the categories related to the annual meeting. Some go up, some go down, but the overall dollars are the same. The total for the finance department expenditures is an increase of 13%, driven mainly by the insurance costs, and an overall increase of 8.8%, taking the salary into consideration. Any questions on either the salary increases or the others that I mentioned?
I have a question. Did you do any salary increase for Lee,
Or,
the custodian at Freedom Hall?
yes, I did.
Okay.
That's in public buildings.
Yes, it's in public buildings.
Okay.
And I'll speak to that. The articles that we have for finance is a $5,000 startup cost for the lockbox system. That's a first-year cost. The annual operating thereafter is estimated at $2,000 a year. And that system supplements the multi-link and the credit card, in that receipts are sent directly to the bank. The bank forwards that electronically to the software package at the water department, so that there is no need for reposting of cash receipts. This gets around the issue of the auditor's concern about the lack of two different people doing billing and doing cash receipts. And talking with the auditors, this is a system that most of their departments or most of their districts use. There are still open questions that I have to resolve. That is the interface with the multi-link system. When we first went down this path, we were looking at Vadar, which was one that the lockbox system had worked with. I'll have to find out if multi-link is one that works as well. The second article is for computer upgrade and security survey. Let me stop there and say that we need to address Lisa's computer immediately. We can't really wait for the budget. We're looking at tonight's presentation on her personal computer because her company computer does not have the adequate power or storage to accommodate it. There are other things that she can't do with her current company computer. Secure Networks has given an estimate for the computer that she would need, and supposedly for what I need, and it's approximately $2,400. Mine, of course, is a shared one, and there are certain things in that $2,400 estimate that I don't need because I already have certain equipment that I own personally. But I would like the Prudential Committee's permission to proceed with ordering Lisa's computer immediately so that she's not using her personal computer, and we get on the waiting list for computers as soon as possible.
I'm fine with that.
Can I have a motion?
Move to approve the immediate purchase of the upgraded computer for Lisa Haven as described by Ray.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ray, can I just ask you, you're going to get a new computer as well,
Yes.
short. What do you mean when you say you have certain other equipment as well? Shouldn't this all just be on, well, what do you mean by that?
I have a, the word just went out of my mind. I have a, God, what's it called, Lisa, the box?
Router?
Pardon?
A router?
No, no.
A docking station.
Docking station. I have the docking station and I have two monitors. I have almost like a day trader set up.
Got
When
it.
my son was here working remotely, we set up his office and so I don't need a lot of equipment other than the laptop itself.
Okay, the two screens are terrific. Makes life much easier. As long as that's no security concern, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's the computer is district owned. That's what the important thing is. The rest of the stuff is just driven off of the that computer.
Got it. Good. Thanks.
The
Ray,
big,
I have a question.
yeah,
I believe the cost of Muni is pretty inexpensive. And what we saw in the water department budget was the monthly cost, which is $935, I think. So is the cost for Muni in here somewhere? In our,
the cost for Muni is, I believe, in the water department, the 11,100 was the initial first year startup and implementation.
so I thought the finance department was gonna take care of the startup and change over to that. I thought we discussed that.
That was in the Vadar. In the Vadar version, I volunteered to propose that the finance department pay for the installation. It would be a special article in either case.
Yeah.
We ended up with the water department putting that special article in their budget. It's $11,100. And I believe that is, if I recall correctly, that's what the water department is reflecting as a special article. I mean, it could live in either place, but the multi-system is primarily a water department system.
Okay. And am I correct that does that include the ongoing $935 a month for the Muni?
That would be in your fiscal 24 budget, I would believe. I
Okay,
mean, yeah, fiscal 24.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, just like the $5,000 is the startup, the fiscal 24 budget for lockbox would have to include a $2,000 annual fee.
Ray, next to that $11,100 number is closed article. Does that mean that, well, what does that mean?
There's two ones that I identified. That gets into the financing, how we want to finance these different articles. And the water department is wrapping up the security article, which has approximately $34,000 left in it. So when we draft the motions, we would request that the district close that security one and transfer the funding to the software transition and test well articles.
Got it. Thank you.
The biggest part of that computer upgrades is the cybersecurity system. And as you recall, the auditors recommended that we have an independent review of the cybersecurity for the district. And I have contacted the person that they recommended to get a quote from them. We're also using them at West Barnstable, and we're talking with other people at West Barnstable. So that is, it's a placeholder in case we can find someone competent who would do it for less. The third article is the digitizing and or shredding of district records. We have approximately 100 and let's call it 130 banker boxes of records in the basement at the fire department, plus about 3 file cabinets of ledgers and personnel file information. I've spoken with 2 companies regarding the digitation and or shredding. And based on those quotes and based on not an exact survey, but an estimate of how much would be shredded, I came up with a $17,000 figure. I suspect at the end of the day, when we finally identify those costs, those files that can be shredded, that number will come down. A banker box costs about $300 to digitize and about $17 to shred. So the more we can get into the shred pile, the more that price will come down. And I believe it's important to get that in as a placeholder until we can finally refine that estimate. Any questions?
I think that's terrific use of money. When we do get down to it, we just do need to have some kind of document retention policy in place, meaning we need to all be on the same page as to what gets shredded and what needs to be retained.
Well, we follow the state, basically, Mark. That becomes our policy.
They've got one laid out.
Yes.
Perfect.
There might be some historical information down there also that we need to look for.
Yeah, there's some things that we will not digitize. I think some of the old annual reports, things like that, you want to retain as is.
Yeah.
You don't want to bother digitizing those. They have a certain, if you will, value in their current state. And those were not included in what I was trying to estimate.
I would suggest that even though we would retain them in paper form, we would also want to make sure we scan them in so we have an electronic record in case something would happen. So it does need to be digitized.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Any other questions? Okay, let's turn to public buildings. Fran, you asked if I had a wage adjustment. I do, but as I look at the year-to-date, I may want to take another look at that to make sure that that has an adequate cost of living increase in that. It may go up another % in the next version.
That's good. He does a great job.
Yeah, and trying to find someone else would be a challenge.
Absolutely.
And more expensive.
Yes.
Electricity, looking at the running rate, we're fine. Water the same. However, when we look at heat, when I extrapolate to the running rate, I add 20% for what I think is going to hit us next year. I'm forced to add about $1,100 for, looks like a large 45% increase, but it's simply $1,100 to maintain the heat of the building. Repairs and maintenance, I've added at 5%, just based on the cost of of building maintenance items, componentry is going up more than 5%, but I think that a 5% protection would be adequate for the coming year. And as you see down below, in building and custodial supplies, I've added a 10% increase there. So the overall increase for the expenditures in Freedom Hall is up 16%. And with the 5% in salaries overall becomes 14.5%. Any questions or comments on Freedom Hall?
I have a comment. I went and checked the lowest heat setting I had the hall at, and it's at 58. So next winter, I'm planning on putting it down lower. Unless we have a serious cold snap, I'll go adjust it upwards. And I'll do the same thing for the for the air conditioning. I'll plan on setting that higher.
Okay.
What do you think it can go down to, Fran? Heat wise?
Maybe 52.
Yeah, I wouldn't go any lower than that for sure. You start
Yeah,
getting,
55.
yeah, maybe 55.
Yeah.
There was a chat from Tom about digitizing records, and he pointed out that some of the annual records are already in digital form at the printers or through Charlie. So just wanted to let you know there was that chat.
No, okay.
Turning to streetlights, I'm increasing the electricity, again, extrapolating from the current year. I'm adding $400 to our electricity, maintaining maintenance the same for an overall 5.7% increase. Turning to our reserve fund, I am recommending that we level fund that at 45,000 next year.
Yeah. That's good.
In the library, I have not got a letter, haven't asked, but I haven't got a letter from them yet. So I put in a nominal 3% increase as a placeholder, awaiting a letter from them. If we don't get one, I'll ask. Turning to debt, overall debt goes down by 2% from the current year. The long-term debt for the principal for the USDA is a consistent 52,632. Principal for the refinance, the new bond that we issued last year, goes up this year by 10,000 to 240,000, and then begins to decline over the next 5 years. Interest is for the amortization schedule, 39,000 for USDA and 55,000 for both payments next year. Remembering that I missed that second payment in fiscal 22. I've got both of them in for fiscal 23. Any questions on debt?
Ray, a slight aside, but when we were talking about the whether or not to acquire the Katuitt School property, I think that you came up with a calculation of what a $1 million demolition would cost the average property in the district. Am I recalling that correctly? It was a real, just kind of a back of the envelope kind of thing.
I suspect I did, and if we look at the capital plan, that gets mitigated by and I think I used $1 million, but that gets mitigated, excuse me, by some articles that we can close and by allocations of free cash and general stabilization.
Okay.
And I'd like to talk about that at the end.
Okay. If you could, do you recall what the number was prior to the you know, kind of deductions you just mentioned? I mean, what's $1 million increase or you know, per household?
It's about, not per household, the tax rate is about, I think it's $15,000 equals a penny or 17 or 18. So call it about 7 or 8 cents for the $1 million on the tax return. Now that is a real back of the envelope, so don't take that to the bank yet.
$7 or $8?
7 or 8 cents.
Cents. Per,
I think you may find that number at some of the early school committee meeting minutes.
okay, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I can recalculate it. I mean, it doesn't take. In fact, we could recalculate it at the end if we wanted to. But you have to make some assumptions about how much we're going to borrow, how much we're going to use with available funds.
Yeah, I'm really, frankly, Ray, kind of interested just as kind of a rule of thumb, you know, when we're looking at things like, you know, a new firehouse or a new water filtration plant, just to get orders of magnitude, you know, obviously varies dramatically with the interest rates, but.
Well, I did that at the bottom of the capital budget based on, again, some assumptions.
Oh,
You could look at what the debt service is, and then we can translate that debt service into a tax rate implication.
okay.
Moving to employee benefits, there have been some significant shifts in employee benefits. The first line is health insurance, and we show that going up 12%, and that's basically a 3% increase in the premiums, plus the addition of a one family policy assumed for the chief. We don't know what he's going to, what policy he's going to pick. So obviously I picked the most pricey one to put in as a placeholder until we get that determined.
Wow, like $40,000 a year. Well, less the 3% increase across the board.
Well, no, there's 3 elements in that increase. Let me be clear.
Okay.
There is a premium holiday in fiscal 23 that we enjoyed in December.
Fiscal year 22.
I'm sorry, in 22. All right, then we've got our numbers wrong on this schedule.
And I can give you the numbers for the new chief at a later time. I have them.
We had the interim chief.
But we,
I-
in
I've
fiscal,
run that. I've got the paperwork now.
okay. So we enjoyed that in fiscal 22. Now I'm confused. What are we
Ray.
looking at?
Ray, we kept the budget the same. We did not budget with the idea that we would definitely receive the premium holiday because
In
we
fiscal
weren't sure.
20 in fiscal 23.
In fiscal 22, we budgeted for all 12 months. We don't get a holiday in fiscal 23. We got one this year. So our actuals are a little bit down this year because we actually got December
Right, so-
premium holidays.
Okay, what I'm getting confused at is if I can draw this is fiscal 23 proposed. This doesn't exist. We've
Oh.
got a
Here's-
column in here that doesn't exist.
Right. This,
This column should go away.
I'll talk with you about which column should go away, this proposed or this proposed.
Well, this is the proposed. I'm not sure what, and these are my these are my schedules, so it's not Lisa's fault. This is mine. This does go up, and it does go up, and I simply took the 3% that the Cape Cod Municipal Healthcare Group has proposed as the increase, and I added one family plan. My math may be wrong, but the idea is that that is what will happen. Whether that's a 12% or a 8%, when you add the one plan, the top plan, I believe, was $4,000 for a family, of which we pay 75%. And I put in the top plan.
$4,000 a month? $4,000?
Yes, a month.
$4,000 a month. Okay.
So Ray, this number is really off too. So
Which number?
the union option payment, you've got it at 279 and it should be more like 40,000.
Yeah, this number belongs over there. The only increase in the option, the medical option payment is the 3% increase in the policies. That applies to dental and the option. The big swings that I really want to talk about here are the county assessment for our retirement, which goes up by 31%. I'm not sure if the auditors in the presentation here or in another venue indicated that Barnstable County has to increase its funding level to the state guidelines, and it will be doing that over the next 8 to 10 years. So we will be experiencing a retirement assessment at about the $425,000 level. However, offsetting that, this past year, as I mentioned, I think in one of our Prudential Committee meetings, when I studied the actuarial study for the OPEB trust, I realized that we were getting credit for our payment of the retiree insurance premiums out of current operations. So when you take that into account, it's approximately 105,000, if memory serves me, that we pay for retiree insurance premiums, and add 33,000 to that. So it's 107. That plus 33,000 is our actuarially determined contribution of 141,000. So fortunately, we can reduce our OPEB trust contribution to offset the increase in the salary retirement that we pay Barnstable County. So overall, our employee benefits will go down by at least 6.5%, possibly more when we find out what exact plan the chief picks. I apologize for the confusion on the columns, but are there any questions about, particularly about the assessment or the OPEB?
Yeah, the OPEB, it is the retiree. What do we call the retiree? $107,000.
We pay for our current retirees' insurance premiums. We currently pay $107,000.
Okay, has that been, how many years has that been going on? I'm just wondering, is this something that just happened, or have we been paying that amount, overpaying?
We have been paying that amount or that equivalent amount annually for as long, let's say forever.
Yeah,
We've been
well,
paying current retirees insurance premiums out of current operations. What I realized in the past year, when I studied the actuarial report, I saw that the liability, the outstanding liability, was reduced not only by what we paid in, but by what we paid for the retiree insurance premiums. So therefore, when it came to calculate what next year's contribution that we would make to meet our annual or actuarially determined contribution of 141,000, I was able to take into account the $107,000 that we currently pay and only had to add 33,000 to meet that actuarially determined contribution. Does that help?
Will that be true for every year going forward then?
Yes.
Not sure I get that.
so, but that figure does include some retired elected officials.
Yes.
And that was, elected officials stopped getting any health benefits or retirement benefits in 2013, I believe.
Yes, I think you are correct. So, Mark, in essence, we over-contributed in the past because we weren't taking into account what we were paying for retiree insurance premiums currently.
Okay, when you say you over contributed, do we get any of that money back?
No, you just have to pay in less over time. You prepaid what you had to pay.
Okay. Okay,
You could, as some districts have done, stop contributing at all. Eliminate the 33,000. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could do that. And there are districts, we are probably in the top 5% in terms of funding status of any municipal entity in Massachusetts. I think it's the top 10%. Some districts don't contribute anything. The town of Barnstable is way behind. The state
okay,
is behind as well, I believe. Okay,
all right.
you don't sound convinced.
I'm not sure I completely understand it, but we'll come back to this at some point. Let me
Okay,
type.
yeah, it's worth coming back to. Stabilization. I am proposing that we make a special contribution of $100,000 to the general stabilization fund from free cash. We earned a considerable sum in free cash this year. And rather than turn it back in, I recommend that we capture a portion of it and add that to our stabilization rainy day fund. The water department stabilization is defined by the bylaws and the meter count in December, and I believe it's at $46,000, roughly level funded.
Okay,
Does the
my
water-
was that it looks like there's a typo. Shouldn't it be FY 22, 23 proposed?
Yeah, that should be FY 2023.
Okay.
So has the water department used any of its stabilization funds ever?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Do we know how much they have now?
if I could remember, I'll have to look it up and tell you. I don't have the number in front of me.
Okay, that's all right.
I think it's somewhere in the $70,000 range, if memory serves. No, I think it's 50 something.
Okay.
I think we bought a truck with it, right?
You did,
When,
Tom.
when COVID hit.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Is that correct, Chris? Is that correct? No,
Yeah, it was a truck, I
Yes.
remember.
Yeah, it was the COVID vehicle
Yep.
that we got there. Yeah, we do have the truck, and we've been putting in, I think now we're on our 3rd year, something like that. So it's got to be upwards of 100 and something in there, I would say.
I don't think it's that much, Chris.
Oh, it's 45 a year? Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, I think this is, it's
I
got
think it was 45 for 3 years.
Okay.
'Cause this isn't contributed yet. 45 for 3 years,
Correct.
less
Yep.
70 for your truck.
Yeah, I think it was 17. Yep. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can we jump back to employee benefits for 1 minute?
You sure can.
Can we, just for informational purposes, break out where this money goes as between finance, water, and fire? I mean, right now it's just, I think, unattributed. And I'm just, for informational purposes, it would be interesting and helpful to know, like what this would be charged to, so to speak.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
We're in a separate category.
I will have to, I mean, health insurance is easy. When it comes to the retirement, I'll have to do an allocation based on salaries because I don't get individual bills.
Okay.
So the OPED and the retirement assessment would have to be an allocation based on salaries,
Okay.
which is what, well, the retirement is driven by salaries. The OPED is driven by medical insurance costs.
Because I'm not, suggesting that we, fold this into the water, fire, and finance, but, it would be helpful, I think, for people to say, what if the fire budget is X
Yeah.
plus an allocation of Y for employee benefits.
Yep.
Just, Mark, just so that you know, that's what used to happen. All the insurances were taken out of the water budget or the fire budget. The water department had the distinction of paying for all of the workers' compensation for the district. And so maybe 13 or 14, it was all consolidated into the health and benefits were all consolidated into the finance department.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting, as I said, that we change that process. Just it will be helpful for informational purposes to know, what that gets allotted to.
Yep, I can do that. Not a problem. In
Great.
fact, we do that for the ambulance costs. I believe that's what we did it for. I remember doing it in any case. The last thing I touch on is space needs. I've suggested 2 additions there to the existing article, unspent article, I would point out. In the acquisition and maintenance area, I'm suggesting we add $27,000 for environmental studies and $1,000 for the maintenance for electricity.
Oh, okay, for the school.
For the school. This is for the school property. We've talked about having enough money for a proper environmental study. And I believe $30,000 was a number that was suggested. If my
When you
memory,
say that a proper environmental study, we're talking about asbestos, oil tank, or both?
yes,
Okay.
and I thought the oil tank was off the table based on the type of construction.
Uh, Probably, we have a good, you know, it has a monitoring
Yeah.
system that alarms, but it only alarms in the building. So we have no
Yeah.
history of an alarm, but
Nobody's
may-
listening.
because it's echoing off the empty halls.
Yeah.
Let's just say that that may be a topic of negotiation with the town and
Mhm.
leave.
So actually, Chris, I was gonna ask you if you could ask your engineers if they could give us the names of some some environmental services agencies or buildings or not buildings, sorry, companies.
Yeah, I can look into that. A couple different people. I know that one of the guys who I believe has this license is one of the guys who just worked for us to help out with our little river over here. Tom Cambereri, I believe.
Okay.
Fran, if we're going to discuss this any further, we might want to go into executive session.
Okay.
We haven't given you an update since our last meeting with the town. I should leave it at that.
I have that further down on the agenda.
Okay.
Tom, did you have a question?
I just wanted to, I know Chris mentioned Tom Cambereri as a consultant, and he does excellent work with water, but I think you need somebody to look at soils as well, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure that Tom
Yeah.
for the asbestos.
Yeah.
But we may have somebody else.
I was just thinking maybe your engineers that you use, I can't remember their name, might have some suggestions.
So we have something in there and we'll revise that based on how we're informed going forward.
Okay.
Looking at the summary, the summary gets into or really reiterates the source of funding that I'm proposing for the budget. And I'm going to, when I'm all through, make a suggestion on changing what I proposed. The reserve fund is level funded at 45. I have the term raise and appropriate. That means that I'm adding it to the levy. It's going to be paid for by taxes. The finance department, again, is going to be paid for by taxes. Its special articles will be paid by free cash. The fire department operating budget would be paid by taxes, raise and appropriate. Its special article, the ambulance, would be paid by free cash. Similarly, the water department operations would be paid by tax levy, and the special articles would be paid by either the closed water security article or free cash. Public buildings operating expenses would be paid by taxes, as would the street lights. The library service has historically been paid by free cash, and I maintain that funding source. The debt service would be paid partially by free cash. It would pay the refinance principal amount and pay the rest by taxes. And the rest would include the USDA principal and interest on both bonds. In the employee benefits area, again, double funding sources, the retirement assessment of approximately 425,000 would be paid by free cash, and the balance of about 460,000 would be paid by the tax levy. The transfers to stabilization for general and water department would be paid by free cash. And the additions to the school property budget or space needs would also be paid by free cash. That 3,400 is the offset from the closure of the water security article, leaving a net amount of funds of cost to be funded of 5,546,000, including an estimated amount for abatements. Using the current ambulance budget of 246, the current water budget of 1,125,000, and approximately 92% of the free cash results in a level tax levy of 3,018,000. That also obviously results in mathematically in a level tax rate and a level bill for the average household in Cape Katuitt. Ignore the rounding 15%, it would be level. What I would like to propose as an alternative, we heard all the uncertainty about the ambulance, if we were going to order it, if we weren't. And I have that being paid for by free cash. I would propose an alternative of taking those free cash funds and adding that in large part to general stabilization to again save it so that we can offset what we know is going to be at least $1 million bill related to the school property. If we funded that by debt and the vehicle for the water department, that would have no change in the current amount of taxes to be raised, because the interest won't get paid until the following year. And I would suggest that the reason for doing that is that the interest that we will pay this year will be less than the interest that we will pay next year. Any questions on funding or alternatives?
No, other than the comment that Ray, I agreed with you that I think the ambulance was put in large part because they're not sure how long it will take to get it, should they need to do it. Is that others' assessment as well? In other words, can that be bumped to the next fiscal year without harm?
That's a question for the fire department.
I got sense from them.
I think that that depends upon the availability of the shared ambulances.
Yeah,
That's correct, Fran.
Sorry, Rick?
You're saying that's correct, that our hope to be able to push the ambulance out 1 or 2 years is really hinged on the availability of a backup ambulance in a shared arrangement.
Okay. Rick, do we have a sense as to when we will have a better idea as to whether that will work?
Actually, there are upcoming meetings with Sandwich. I would expect to know significantly more by the middle of next month at our next commissioners meeting, with the new chief on board to participate in the process and discussion.
So you'd prefer that it remain in the budget for at least for the time being?
Yes.
I would. If as we, worst case scenario, we get a great deal on a shared ambulance, we don't need it, we can withdraw the article at the annual meeting.
I would suggest that the funding that we use for that would be debt funding. That way, that frees the free cash to do whatever savings or non-savings you wish to do. The debt doesn't cost us anything until we borrow. And if the need is not there, we can either withdraw the motion at the district meeting or subsequently rescind that authorization. And if we do need it, it's there to take advantage of.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to, if Lisa, you could put up the capital plan. You have that available? I tried to compile what everybody had submitted individually. Compile it, estimate what we could fund of those capital items with free cash or other sources, and then what we had to borrow, and to calculate what that debt service would be at the end of the, and I ran it out to 2000 fiscal 28. So 6 years out, the debt service, you scroll down to the bottom. Again, I'm making assumptions about how much free cash we're going to get, what other funds we can use. The debt service would be $1,563,000 annually to pay for, based on the numbers that I used, which is both high for the fire department and for the water department plant. It would be about $1.5 million in debt service at the end of that period.
So you just did the capital improvement for, you didn't do anything for Freedom Hall? Oh yeah, roof.
Yes, I did a painting and a roof.
Yeah. Need a new parking lot and we need a new septic system at Freedom Hall.
So, Ray, on here, do you have if you could scroll down to the bottom so I don't have to look up at my own little document. So what would you anticipate would be the impact on, I know there's a lot of variables and a lot of unknown things that could occur here, but what would you anticipate the impact on the tax levy would be on that 1.56 or 1.5 million debt service? if you could extrapolate.
Hang on, I'll do that.
I have one thing from the water department too, that got left off for fiscal year 28,
What's
and
that
that's
one?
85,000 for a lime truck.
Okay. Well, roughly speaking, Seth, to answer your question, the current year's tax levy is $3 million. And that results in a tax rate of $1.70.
Right.
If we added $1.5 million to that, that would add about 85 cents to that tax rate
Per $1,000 value.
per $1,000 value. So it would be about a 50% increase per household from about $1,000 to $1,500.
Right. And then if you were to, again, extrapolate, say, between now and 2028, an average budgetary increase of, what did we run this year overall? Was
Overall, we ran 7%.
7%. And so if things were to trend that way, and we're currently at 5.3 is our budget, we're probably would be at 6, 7, 8. We're talking just about $8 million would be our annual budget up if it were to go this way by 2020, be up around 8 million
Yes.
and change. And there's a whole series of variables.
Well, Seth, I would, this year is unusual and it's probably going to be the same next year. But if you average it, you look down at the bottom and look at the average increase, it's probably, my guess, closer to 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so you compound that 4 or 5%, 4.5%. It's still like almost a 50% increase
Right.
when you compound that over the 8 years. But also realize that real estate values will be going up.
Right. So relative to that, we'll be bringing in more money.
Yes. So, I mean, the question you raise is, and I know you talk about a governance study. I mean, in my mind, the governance study is an examination of alternative strategies.
Right. And that's basically what I'm saying. Well, I was going to go into later on, just briefly, but
You create a base case. We used to do this in industry quite a bit. You create a base case, which is what we're kind of describing.
right.
You have agreed upon assumptions and you extrapolate out to, in our case, it would be tax rate, not profitability.
Right.
What that tax rate would be at a point in the future. And then you develop an alternative strategy, merge with merge with West Barnstable, merge with the town. And you develop what that would be over that same period and see what the result would be.
Right. That's yeah. Because I mean, granted, for this discussion, maybe it's not but that's what I essentially am thinking about is, so, as we go forward with this capital budget with things that we obviously need, just from a political perspective or from a perception perspective, as we get into the things that cost $20 million, the more information we have, the better. I guess that's my whole point. Because I mean, it all makes sense. I mean, the numbers are there. These are things that we need to do, but the more information we have to present and to make it seem as if, we've done all our due diligence and that we're 100% sure that, this is going to work out just fine, which it obviously, in my opinion, will. But yeah, I mean, it's always frightening to see big giant numbers for 20 million here and 10 million there.
adds up to real money.
Yeah. So anything else on the budget?
Now, from my standpoint, I've got your questions, and I think, Mark, I'll circle back and talk about it. When I get that split out, you can
I
take.
have I have a chat from Tom Happenstedt who says a lime truck in 2028 will cost 85K.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Can we move on to minutes? We have minutes from January 24th, February 28th, and March 10th. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I did.
Yes.
Yes, oh, okay. And we're ready for an approval. Could I have a motion to approve those 3 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do we want to talk about the governance study?
Well, I guess, listening to the budget, and I said, a little bit of what I've been saying right along, looking at that capital plan. I don't know, now thinking about it as I've been contemplating it over the last, few weeks, or especially just now, that maybe, I don't know if governance study is the right term for what it is, that maybe it is, but I mean, that it's more of a, I don't know if we call it a municipal consultation or a cost benefits, study, something that
Strategy
will,
alternatives,
there you go. That's what do you,
strategy alternative evaluation.
there you go. That's exactly it. So Ray's got the term. And because I guess it isn't really about governance so much as having all the information at hand and really have done all our due diligence for the presentation aspect of what we're going to have to do in the next, 5 years, and being prepared to make the best case possible so that we can limit the sticker shock that is inevitably going to result through things that we all know that we obviously need through, the water commissioners, the fire commissioners, and all the, their study and work and preparing all of this. But we all know that when we get down to the time where these things are going to appear on the warrants as articles, that we're going to have to be extremely prepared with all that information. So I don't know how that will pan out. I mean, Ray, you're familiar with this process, and I'm sure as we go through, we'll be able to put it all together and find the people that we need, or if we have to hire consultants. And what do you think about that?
I think it's something that you want to do in-house. You don't want to do consultants, but what you have to do if you are going to evaluate a strategy that involves another district, it really has to involve that district.
Right. So liaison between the districts, whichever district it would may be, just for the sake of argument, whichever it would be.
Yeah, you would have to be on the Prudential committee level liaison, then the administrative staff would take their orders from them.
And when would we embark on such a thing? Since we have, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to these things, and with the PFAS and with, the water department's, filtration system or plant, whatever it is, could be on the horizon, could be tomorrow, could be next week, could be next month, could be 5 years from now. What would be an appropriate time frame to set up this kind of conversation, and how would we do it at our committee?
Yeah.
You think, Fran?
Well, I think we'd have to approach the other committees. I can tell you from my conversations that there really isn't anybody out there that wants us.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not even really looking at it from a consolidation standpoint, because that's not my agenda particularly. I, as I say, want to be as prepared as humanly possible with the information for, to make it as clear on black and white on paper for everybody, in order to limit the kind of blowback that you can have from, when we're trying to spend this kind of money. I don't know if maybe that's my perception, maybe it's a misperception, but I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
It is not a misperception. I agree with you. if is governance study the, exact term? I don't know what it is, but I think you and I are thinking exactly along the same lines in terms of, we see these costs coming at us. What's the best way to address this? Are we going to fund these ourselves? People have, I think, strong reactions to the word consolidation. I try not to ever to bring it up for that reason. It's really a matter of what are we going to do about these upcoming costs? What's the best process to figure that out? And I do think it involves a lot of discussion between the fire and the water and then the Prudential committee. I mean, it all is eventually coming from the same tax base, so we need to be kind of balancing out these competing demands in some kind of logical way. And it's complicated by the fact that, as you say, the water department could need a pretty expensive fix on an unknowable time frame.
Right.
Probably not tomorrow, but maybe not as far out as we've projected it.
Or would hope. And I mean, the fire station thing has been on the back, has been on the front and then the back burner coming and going for a number of years now. So, I mean, I just think that working together, the three committee, I suppose that's a part of it too. The three committees working in tandem to try and get through, to work out these particular not problems, but how are we going to accomplish these ends in the most economical way possible and the easiest and most fluid? Anna, what do you think, Tom? I'm sorry, Fran, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say, I think that not only for the school project, but I think for this project, one of the most important things that we could do is hire a grant writer. There are grants out there that are available, especially for water protection, that could help ease our costs on many of these things. So.
Right. I mean, and if, yeah, because I mean, I'm not an expert in municipal finance, obviously, or in the functions and how you go about these things. And so my first thought is, well, you hire somebody who will tell you, okay, so do the following things. This is the best, I've seen it done before, and you do it this way. And this is, you know what I mean? Who is it as a function of the studies that are going to, because the school property kind of is can be the linchpin in all of these things, whether it be the station, whether it be the pumping, or not the pumping, but the treatment plant. And I suppose we can cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm just concerned about everybody working in tandem and having the best presentation possible with the most information, so that it will go, hopefully it can't go very smoothly, it won't, but more smoothly than it could. Yeah. When we really get down to doing it, which could be in the near term.
Ray?
Yes.
Is some of this something that the auditors could help us with?
A grant writer or?
No, not a grant writer, but just looking at these costs and amortizing them or looking at them.
What are we going to ask them?
I don't know how they've seen other places do it.
But great.
I would say that most organizations
you just posed,
have a long-term plan that has a financial backbone to it. I think that's within the capability of the people that we have. I don't think you need to bring outside accountants who, despite the fact that they audit us, are not familiar with the day-to-day operations of a water department, a fire department, for sure. Neither am I, to be candid, but I'm closer to it than they are. And I know that, for example, Jen in the water department and the new chief in the fire department is going to be intimately aware of those. I'm always, I'll be candid, my bias is, the last thing you want to do is hire a consultant. Unless you have a very specific task for them to do. I think hiring a grant writer would be a very good investment. There are people who know what terms to use when addressing the federal and the state level.
Yeah.
Ray, I completely agree with the one thing you said, which is what's the question you're going to ask?
Yeah.
And that is something that we need to get our minds around. I think, you know, I don't know the workings of fire or water department either, but I think.
Did Mark just disappear in the middle of his statement? Was that, did that just happen? That's
Do
too
we have
bad.
we have the cancel culture here.
They didn't like it. That was it. He's gone. But I understand. I think I know where he was going with that. But I guess what I'm really trying to say is, and you know, I know it may be an unusual thing to do, but I think in light of the magnitude of the things that we have coming up, that maybe would it be possible to schedule all of us, meaning all 9 of us, to be at one meeting, meaning the water, the fire, and the Prudential, to have a large conversation about these things so that we're all there and all can have our input rather than just attending the meetings of another body? Or is that worth anything? Does anybody think that that would be worthwhile? I mean,
Maybe a working group of a representative from each committee.
do you think it would be too unwieldy if we had
I think
everybody
nine
together?
would be too unwieldy, yeah.
What do you think, Tom?
That's a lot of people, but I don't know. I mean, it could be done. It's just, I think I would like the idea of a grant writer to
Mhm.
look into options for us for funding construction, the design and construction of a water treatment plant. But we also had, like you said, you got the fire department facility that needs some help as well. There are some big ticket items there, and I think those 2 seem to be the largest 2. So there is a couple of questions that are pretty distinct and direct there.
Right.
That we could have somebody investigate for us. I don't know. I'd be happy to get together with you guys again on this, and we could talk about it, or you know, Scott or Mark, I'm sure would also be willing to participate.
And Rick, if you're on there, how do you feel about what things that I've been saying in the last little while?
I've had conversations with a number of you over the past months, and in case of Fran, the past years. I think a lot of this is long overdue. We need to get a much more concentrated focus on these issues and a financial plan for it. And as you alluded to, Seth, the better we have numbers that show the true cost of the various pathways we could go down, I think the easier it is to find and endorse a best solution. I think the fire commissioners, all 3 of us, would be happy to sit down in a joint session. It might be a little unwieldy, but it also might be helpful at the beginning to kind of get some consensus and then assign a representative from each. Or, I mean, there are a number of
Right.
models we could employ, but there certainly would be the willingness on the part of the fire commissioners to participate. And I'm sure the new chief would love the opportunity to get a real fast catch up on background and history and proposals going forward, solutions going forward.
Thank you. And so maybe how would we, I mean, if we were to go now, I know that there's been talk in years past about I don't know if they've occurred, not during the brief time that I've been here. How would you have a public meeting, or I mean, between one fire commissioner, one water commissioner, or the chairs of those committees, or however, one of each of them? How does that work in terms of the open meeting law?
Well,
That's just like any other public meeting. There's no voting and there's nothing being accomplished. But
No,
would it
if,
be,
you know, if it's all the elected officials attend, you just have to, you know, follow the open meeting law rules for it. If
Right.
it's one member from each committee, then they're not on the same
right, it's
committee.
not a deliberative body, so there's no voting. It could be ad hoc, but maybe that would be an interesting thing to do, is to schedule a monthly meeting where there would be one of each and just to discuss, bring together what's been happening at their 3 meetings in the public, as opposed to having to attend each of the individual meetings to talk about a specific issue, not to be just, and maybe this issue in particular, about our capital improvement plan and how it is that we can, approach it. I don't know.
Would that
Seth,
just
if-
be the policy committee?
I guess
Could that be
it
the
could
policy
theoretically
committee?
be but I mean, yes and no.
I mean, do
Is
we
it a
need another?
policy?
No, I don't think this is something, for the policy advisor committee. Because they don't, they don't know the numbers or,
I imagine like Ray and then one fire, one water, one Prudential, Ray and Lisa, or maybe Chris or whoever, however it would, whatever the agenda would be, would dictate who would attend relative to the discussion. And it would be this going forward, this capital thrust that we're going to have to undertake in the next 5 years. I don't know, maybe it's totally unreasonable, but
I would like to suggest that have an initial meeting of all the elected officials to sit down and decide,
what
how
the
they,
best way
and
to go
what the best way is to go forward in dealing with this and coming up with the best approach. And that's, I would start that way.
I like the idea of that.
I like that idea, Fran.
And if I could chime in, the one thing I would add to that is that to really maintain the sharper focus that Seth started with, of it being geared to long-term capital planning, major needs, funding options. There's more than enough to keep all 9 of us quite busy for some time, just to try to get a sharper clarity around that.
No, I agree with that, but also, we're not going to be able to come up with specific numbers for people. It's going to be, we need to do a hard look at everything that's proposed and, and see how far they can be pushed out, or if they really need to be done at all. Like the cesspool at Freedom Hall.
I know we
Put
can
an
get a,
innovative cesspool.
one of the new fancy ones.
That-
That would be good.
Yeah, but
Put out diapers at the door,
I'm sorry?
and just put out diapers at the door, tell people to take it home with them.
There you go.
Okay. Moving
So,
on.
yeah, that was my commentary. Though, thank you all for listening.
Yeah, Seth, I agree with where you're heading. I think that Fran's idea to have a meeting of all the elected officials, at least to start, and Rick's suggestion that it be focused very narrowly on long-term planning and capital issues, that all sounds very good to me.
Good framework to start with. So I didn't have it on the minutes because I took it out to put it the governance study in, but we had a meeting last month of the school committee. Do you want to report on that, Mark, or I can?
Sure, I can. We continue to work towards this transfer. We are at the point now where we have a conservation restriction under, we actually have a copy of it now. My suggestion, and as well, we have the very beginning bones of some kind of transfer document. There was initially a proposal that there would be conservation restrictions from the town to the district and from the district to the town. The latest suggestion is that the conservation restriction will simply go from the town to the district.
Meaning they would have they would be allowed to develop, but we would not be allowed to develop?
No.
No, the other way around.
They would be making representations to us about their use of the property they retain.
Right.
There would probably need to be some kind of transfer document, meaning like along the terms of a bill of sale, so to
I
speak.
get
The town hereby grants to the district, meets and bounds and all that. My recommendation is that we get Mark Boudreau involved at this point in terms of looking at that proposed transfer document and looking at the conservation restriction. Mark Robinson has been working on the conservation restriction, and he is, someone who has done a lot of those. Mark may just have a somewhat different perspective on certain issues. The town is interested in getting this deal done, I would say. They initially were aiming to finish it up before our annual meeting. It's pretty clear that they won't be able to do that, but that's their goal. So I think this is going to happen, and it's going to happen probably not this fiscal year, but early in the next one.
Not too early, I hope. So,
Mark, from our last school committee subcommittee meeting, when we left there, you guys were gonna check with Mark Boudreau about the allocations from the last district meeting and whether or not that could be used to fund the level 2 studies for the soil and oil tank. Did you get a response from him?
I'm working on
No,
it.
we didn't ask him because we then, as you can tell from some of our earlier conversations, we were having discussions about whether we needed those and of what type. If we're going to discuss that further, we should probably go into executive session.
No, I think we can leave that for the moment.
Okay.
So,
Suffice it to say that the issues relating to asbestos and the oil tank continue to be live issues.
yeah,
Very good.
okay, so nothing to report about Freedom Hall. But I had a email from Ken Malloy, 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon, that he's not going to be running this year for moderator. He will be the moderator for the annual meeting, but after that, we need somebody to run. And as things stand right now, the person has till the 5th of April to get the signatures and get it into the clerk. And it has to be back from the clerk by the 20th of April. So Seth, you said you spoke to someone?
I did. I was hoping to hear from them today, but did not. I'm going to reach out to them tomorrow. If not, there's a couple other people that I was going to speak with.
So
And I can-
no, go
I've got
ahead.
7 days. I've got 7 days, so I won't panic until 5 days. If any of my people that I'm asking.
There are a couple of options. If somebody doesn't get papers in time, they can be a writing candidate and they have to get at least 25 signatures, the same as they would get on nomination papers. Or if absolutely nobody's interested, we can.
Do we appoint somebody then? Do we have to appoint someone?
Well, yeah.
If nobody comes, who's going to who would do the meeting? Charlie? Would that be Charlie
No, it would be Mark Boudreau.
or Mark Boudreau? Because wasn't it 2 or 3 years ago we didn't have, it was during
COVID.
the pandemic. That's right. He did the meetings.
So that's that story. The only other thing I was thinking is, and I tried to research this today and I didn't get too far, was just hiring before we had an elected moderator, they would open the annual meetings and then they would have a vote of someone in the annual meeting to moderate the meeting. Usually Mr. Crawford, from what I could see. So the other thing I was thinking, well, we could eliminate, change the bylaws and eliminate the position of the moderator and just, hire a moderator for each meeting. So that's all I've got. So. Any other concerns or ideas about yes, Bray?
No, not about moderators. This is on something else.
Okay,
We need to invite the auditors to our next meeting, if that's acceptable. And as a matter of fact, I just made a note. I could ask Tony to opine on his experience in long-term financial planning.
okay. Sounds good.
Rick,
You asked about other comments about the moderator. If we were to go to a hired moderator, who would assume the responsibility for appointing citizen participants to policy advisory and the bylaws committee?
The Prudential Committee.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any other comments, concerns?
not for me.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you all very much. It's been a long meeting. We got a lot done, I hope.
I think so. So I move to close the meeting.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. See you all
Thank
soon.
Have a good evening.
You.